Imagine a battle that raged for 300 long days, transforming lush forests into fields of charred remains, turning rolling hills into vast, muddy quagmires, and forever silencing the soldiers, who forgot the meaning of peace. That was Verdun in 1916. If you're drawn to authentic historical narratives, please consider liking and subscribing. Your support allows me to continue sharing these compelling, real-life experiences from the Great War. On the morning of February 21st, 1916, a dense mist still clung to the air above Verdun when, without warning, the German artillery opened fire with a deafening roar. The initial shells struck Fort Douaumont with terrifying force, one of France's last fortified defenses guarding its eastern border. In the muddy trench below, Sergeant Henri Morel, a 25-year-old native of Lyon, instinctively looked up not to see, but to sense the oppressive weight in the atmosphere. He knew something significant, something terrible, was coming. And then it arrived. The ground bucked and shuddered. A geyser of mud erupted skyward. Just another day in Verdun. Another day in a world turned completely upside down. Henri instinctively ducked back into the trench as shell after shell exploded around them with unrelenting fury. Soldiers screamed and stumbled, desperately seeking cover, but Verdun offered no sanctuary. The very earth beneath them seemed to roar like a ravenous beast. By noon, Fort Douaumont, once hailed as impregnable, had fallen to the Germans. The devastating news spread like wildfire through the labyrinthine trenches. Henri gripped his rifle tighter, his knuckles white. With the loss of Douaumont, Verdun had lost more than just a fortress. It had lost a vital piece of its hope. But France was not easily broken. Within days, General Philippe Pétain arrived to take command of the desperate defense. His first and most crucial order was to reinforce the Voie Sacrée, the sacred road, the single, tenuous supply route into Verdun. Every minute, trucks laden with ammunition, food, and fresh troops rumbled along the road, a lifeline that could never be severed. Henri vividly recalled the day Pétain visited their sector of the line. There was no grand ceremony, no rousing speeches, just one short, weary sentence, delivered with quiet resolve. "Et passeront pas." They shall not pass. The words were spoken softly, yet their impact reverberated far and wide, bolstering the weary troops. The brutal battle stretched on endlessly, an agonizing test of will. Henri and his squad clung to their position near Hill 304, one of the most relentlessly bombarded places on Earth. The surrounding forests had been annihilated, replaced by a desolate landscape of scorched and splintered tree trunks. The ground was a grotesque mosaic of water-filled craters and lengthening shadows. Each night felt the same, a prelude to more horror. Henri lay awake, listening to the distant artillery fire, a low, rhythmic pulse, like the beating of an ancient, ominous drum. Then closer, then deafening. At dawn, the trench always looked different, subtly altered by the night's carnage, and there was invariably one fewer man among them. Yet, even amidst the overwhelming horror, small embers of humanity flickered and survived. One evening, Henri shared his last precious piece of bread with Jacques, his closest friend. Jacques offered a tired smile. "Tomorrow I'll share mine with you." But tomorrow never came for Jacques. He was mortally wounded at dawn during a heavy barrage. Henri desperately dragged him back to relative safety, but his injuries were too severe to overcome. As he lay dying, Jacques squeezed Henri's hand, whispering weakly, "Stay strong. Verdun needs you." Henri carried those words like a protective shield, a sacred charge. June 1916 brought renewed and ferocious German assaults on Mortem and Hill 304. Weeks of relentless fighting ensued. Every single meter of ground was bought with unimaginable sacrifice and loss of life. Henri felt an all-consuming exhaustion seep deep into his bones, threatening to overwhelm him. But he stubbornly continued to fight. For Jacques, for his comrades, for the solemn promise he couldn't bear to break. One afternoon, amidst an especially brutal and unremitting barrage of shells, the French forces launched a daring counterattack. Henri climbed out of the trench alongside his squad, mud clinging heavily to their boots, acrid smoke stinging their eyes. Their battle cries rose above the cacophony of explosions. In that moment, Henri wasn't thinking about ultimate victory. He was solely focused on surviving long enough to pull the man beside him back to safety. Late in 1916, the French forces managed to retake Fort d'Aumont and Fort Vaux, marking a turning point in the seemingly endless battle. When Henri heard the hard-won news, he didn't cheer or celebrate. He simply reached into his pocket and reverently touched the handkerchief that had belonged to Jacques. "We're still standing," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. The agonizing Battle of Verdun finally came to an end in December 1916, a landscape utterly erased and scarred beyond recognition. Countless men lost to the insatiable maw war. But for those who endured its 300 hellish days, Verdun became an enduring symbol, not just of the horrors of war, but of unparalleled endurance, of unwavering hope against all odds, of the indomitable human spirit refusing to yield. And even now, more than a century later, the same profound question lingers in the air. What truly kept those soldiers standing, fighting to the very end? And what will happen next on this blood-soaked battlefield?